What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
When did you see it having impact on people where you saw performance changing and people embracing this for themselves so that it becomes a two-way street instead of one-way?
Yeah, it didn't happen immediately, right? It took a few months for people to see that I was genuinely trying to make an effort. It's not that I didn't make mistakes. I still made a lot of mistakes, but the change in me was that I was starting to take ownership of the mistakes. I started to be vulnerable and apologize and recognize that what I was doing wasn't right, or if I took poor decisions, I was able to take ownership of it. And so people started to see that I was, I guess, willing to be different. And so people that were still there at the time, I guess, began to take a leap of faith on me and on the company. And even despite our financial woes and financial uncertainty, a lot of the people decided to stick around. A lot of them decided to do things I never expected. And I started to see them fight for Softway, fight for one another. And eventually within 3 years, our company went from almost closing down to tripling our revenue and increasing our EBITDA margin by 42% difference. And our attrition dropped from 30% to 12%. Our client retention went up from 60% to 90%. And so all of the metrics, that KPIs that you would generally measure business performance, started to go up by a lot.
Yeah, your
And
clients So your clients actually what was their view when they saw this happening within your company?
Yeah, so initially, our clients had the blessing or the curse of being with Softway for some of them a long time. And some of our customers to this journey, working with us, witnessed our transformation to the point where they started to hang out more with us than their own coworkers. They started to come to our meetings and would just stick around doing their other stuff, but just wanted to stay in the room with us because they just enjoyed the camaraderie and the work that we were doing and just hung out with us. And to a point where a Fortune 2 company here in town, their middle managers, who were our stakeholders, basically said, hey, we need a little bit of Softway in our own company. Can you help us with our culture? Can you help us with our leaders' transformation? And at that point in time, we basically were like, no, that's not what we do. We help you with technology and communications. But they insisted that we help them because they said, we've tried the big 4 consulting firms. We have all kinds of transformation efforts that go on here for culture, but nothing really changes. We trust you guys to, even though you've never done it before, we believe you guys can be successful in helping us. So they forced us into a pilot. I mean, they were our largest customer, so we were compelled to do a pilot program for a leadership experience, and they gave us 2 weeks to do it. And in that pilot program, we ended up having huge success to where we ended up then traveling the world, helping train 1,400 leaders across the globe and helping with culture transformation efforts for our 10,000 employee business unit. So that's kind of how our customers, who were really leveraging us for technology services, now are leveraging us for culture services, which is not an offering that even I thought we would offer. But that led me to eventually find our new purpose and our new calling, which was to bring back humanity to the workplace. And we do that through love, through culture of love. And that's what gave birth to Love as a Business Strategy.
Yeah. So if you look at that, though, that it's not bipolar, is it? That's what drives your technology because it's how do you impact the clients through your technology? How do you serve the clients through technology? How do you create an environment for your team to get a sense of value by the technology that's being not just developed, but actually one of the things that I found that's different about your organization is the ownership that you take for implementation. You know, especially for somebody who comes out of the executive search industry where we watch turnover take place, we watch disengagement take place. When there's especially a technology solution being rolled out, you have all these milestones that have to be hit. And if you don't hit the milestone today, you know, it's one of my favorite examples that a company had a 15-year implementation plan. It was massive, it was global. Well, if they didn't hit the milestone for the first 3 years, they definitely weren't going to hit year 15. So there was huge pressure on that. What you've done is you have a sort of a process, a system, a culture that your people take ownership to making sure that the solution that's being designed and developed that literally is being implemented effectively, which is, I think it's a little bit different, isn't it, than most technology-based companies?
Yeah, no, totally. So, you know, we believe that, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast, as Peter Drucker rightfully stated, right? But we believe that while that is wholeheartedly true, that behaviors eat culture for lunch.
That's right.
So you can't transform culture to then have effective strategy if you don't start with the behaviors and the mindsets of individuals. So our whole philosophy is no matter whether you're building technology or coming up with process improvements, it all starts with the people behaviors, and it all starts with people's mindsets, and behaviors are the bottom line. Because if the people don't embody the right mindsets and the behaviors of how they treat one another, you will not have effective outcomes on your technology solutions. Neither will you have effective outcomes on your process improvements. In fact, you'll have the converse of it. If you don't have the right environment with people having the right mindsets and how they treat one another, you will see an impact on your process improvements of technology solutions. For example, if people are not experiencing true trust and empowerment inside of the organization, you will see processes will be implemented by the management that actually leads to inefficiencies instead of efficiency, because they'll put in so much bureaucracy in place because they don't trust their people. And that leads to inefficiency, which is counterintuitive to why you have process improvements. And similarly with technology, if people are not inclusive or empathetic to the needs of their customers or users, you will end up building a technology solution or making a decision that excludes a certain segment of users. For example, the Android versus the iPhone world. If people are just looking at it from an iPhone world, you will exclude Android users. This is an example for fun. So you see strategies fail not because of poor implementation of the strategy, but because of the poor mindsets and behaviors of the people defining those strategies. And so our whole approach is, you want to build better technology solutions, you want to build better business outcomes, better strategies, you need to start with the behaviors in mind. And that's where you need to begin.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because when I met you and we started talking about this whole world about culture, every leader I've talked to, I always ask the question about define culture so I can understand and move it from a buzzword to put definition around it. And the overarching theme that I've walked away with is based upon two principles. Culture within an organization is based upon the way the people, not the leaders, but the people within the organization think and act, behave. It's the mindset and the action that is the culture of the organization. That's what you just beautifully described, that when you're doing any kind of a systems, a process or whatever, how culture affects it, because of it's the way people think about the value of the system and the process, their own individual value for being included in designing, developing, rolling out the role in that process. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is that once their paycheck is met, the whole thing is not about self-actualization. It's literally about value. It's how do I feel a sense of value, which in today's time is such a critical cause of this whole, call it great resignation. I prefer to call it the great reset, because I think it's a better description of what's going on. People aren't resigning to go out to the woods. They're resetting their role. And you built an organization that your turnover's gotten down to a, no, not zero, but at least to a minimum level, especially compared to it would be, isn't it?
It's true. And I think if you look at the measurements beyond just the attrition, there are a lot of other measurements you can look at: performance and business outcomes, and those are just as valuable. I agree with you. It all comes down to behaviors. It's the emotional environment of how we feel around each other is what is culture. It's this force or feeling that feels almost intangible, but everybody knows it when they feel it, right? And it's built from how we treat one another. If I am around my coworkers, and if all of my interactions lead to tearing down that other employee or making them feel less than or not valued, that is destroying the culture. Or you could be in an environment where you're very supportive and loving and compassionate and caring of your team members, to where they show up to work every day feeling valued, respected, included, feel like they belong. Those are the environments where you're building culture. And we believe people either build up others or tear down others. There's no neutral interactions. You either have a positive experience or a negative experience. There's no neutral.
Yeah, but I have a hard time believing that your company, that you just run around the hallways hugging people. I think there's tell me about the one of the biggest questions I'm always asked by leaders is the subject of accountability. How do you hold accountability in your definition of a loving environment? What have you learned through that process?
Totally. I think there's a misnomer that love means being soft and nice and being a doormat that people can walk over. But that is not the type of love that we're talking about. We're talking about a genuine care and love for one another, where you can have real, honest conversations without fear of disrupting harmony. And we are able to do that because we love one another so much, so that we can be genuinely honest with each other, because everybody understands the intent of each other, why we're giving the feedback or holding someone accountable. And we call that tough love, is because when you genuinely love someone, you are going to be compelled to hold them accountable, because it's the benefit of them and the organization and the team. And so love actually enables accountability, because we are able to now have the much needed honest conversations, instead of artificially creating the harmony, which is what most leaders or teams like to do. Is like when there are tough predicaments, or someone's not carrying their weight, or someone's not delivering on a task that they are intended to, most people go to fake harmony, where we try to minimize those conflicts, minimize the problems, because we're afraid of hurting other people's feelings. But in a culture of love, that if you don't give the feedback, if you don't hold the other person accountable, then you're really not supporting them. And if you genuinely care for them, you will give the feedback, you will have tough conversations, and the other person is going to receive it in a way that they know that, oh, Mohammad has the best intent for me. Mohammad genuinely cares for me. So if he's giving me this feedback, although it's hard to swallow, it is feedback which is being given not because Mohammad doesn't love me, but because he does love me and he wants the best for me. So we're able to create an environment where accountability is enabled through the culture of love. But there's a misconception, right? Because people think love means nice.
Yeah, it centers around Patrick Lencioni's great book on the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. When it first came out, it wasn't called that. It was called the 5 dysfunctions of a team, until they realized that nobody wanted to claim that they were dysfunctional. So they didn't change the inside of the book. They just changed the branding of it. But there's 5 stages to it. Build trust. And then if I have a trusting environment, then what I could do is come in and I could have not conflict, but I could have productive conflict. And once I have productive conflict, then what I could do is I could fight for commitment, of us being committed. Well, commitment only comes into play when you have 2 things. One is buy-in. And the only way you can have buy-in is if you can have clarity of message. And that's where this difficult conversation comes into play. Yeah, that's where clarity raises its head. But once you have that, then we can go to peer accountability. And that's having those conversations where we're holding each other accountable. And then at that stage, then we could focus on the overall corporate mission. But those are the 5 stages of an effective running organization. And when you talk about the culture that you've built. It's not a concept. It literally is that type of a stage process you talk through. So much so that you went and rebranded your organization somewhat. In the fact you still have Softway as a technology-based company, but what
Yeah.
you've done is you've had to go in and rebrand this mission that you're on that centers around culture. And we can almost see the brand in your shirt because it's pop
Yes.
your chest up. There you go. Okay. Tell us about Culture Plus, because I think it's an important message that has to get out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we began on this mission of bringing back humanity to the workplace, we needed to separate a brand and an entity that focuses on offering culture as a service to live out this mission. And so we decided to come up with a name called Culture Plus. And the reason for the name, number one, I think it sounds pretty cool because it mimics Disney Plus and ESPN Plus. But
Apple Plus, you
also,
betcha.
yes, but the idea is culture is not about having people fit into culture. It's about adding to the culture. And so we wanted to show the power of diversity and difference adding to the culture, because it's not about going and hiring replicas. We don't want multiple Mohammeds in the organization. We want to hire people who are different from Mohammed and different from one another, because that's what helps you bring in the power of diversity and culture. So we basically, it's all about culture add and not culture fit, because from culture fit, you're excluding people. From culture add, you're bringing in more people. So that was the inspiration for the name, besides the fact that it's got already a pretty good branding done by ESPN and Disney and so forth. And so that's the business. And our business is to offer culture as a service through this brand to help organizations strengthen their culture by changing the behaviors of their employees and staff, because it all boils down to behaviors. So we have a series of offerings and programs to help leaders go through a journey of self-awareness, because most leaders think they're, with all good intent, they think they're better than what they really are in terms of the experience. Just like for me, I thought I was a great leader. I never recognized that people were experiencing me very differently from what I thought I was being experienced as.
Perspective,
and
yeah.
so exactly. And so most leaders lack self-awareness. So we take them on a self-awareness journey to make them realize that, oh, wait, I do have an impact on the business outcomes just by the way I behave. So how do I change my behaviors, and take them on a journey of commitment and giving them the tools and actions to change their leadership behaviors. But then we also have the same program catered for individual contributors, so they too can go through on a journey of self-awareness and change their behaviors so that they can work in an environment with other coworkers that lives up to the values of culture of love, thereby creating an environment where they feel included, feel the sense of belonging, and feel valued, respected, and they're able to bring their true self and be psychologically safe around their teammates, leading to better results in terms of business outcomes. And so that's the business of Culture Plus. And we had to separate it from our technology business, because a lot of people are like, wait, technology, but you offer culture? We're so confused. So today it's clear, but also our differentiation is, hey, we're not just these consultants and academics telling you how you should build culture. We're true practitioners in the sense we're still running a technology business, learning as we go, going through the great resignation just like you. We're making mistakes just like you. So here's what we have learned through the culture of love. And when we're able to share that with other leaders from a place of empathy, leader to leader, we're like, here's what I'm going through, and here's how we made mistakes, and here's how we corrected and learned from those mistakes. People are far more tuned in to listen to us than just reading case studies or theoretical research on how to lead. And that's been our secret sauce or difference, is that we come genuinely from a place of empathy, and we're very vulnerable and we're open. We share our mistakes before our successes, and that allows people to receive us more openly and go on their own journey of introspection.
Yeah, it fits well with the book that I really call Equipped to Lead the Extraordinary power of emotional intelligence. And it's the 4 stages of leadership, effective leadership. If I want to work on my relationship with you, I need to be aware of who you are, which means I got to separate myself from that. And then I got to figure out, how do I manage myself so I can interact with you better? But the first step of everything is self-awareness. It's being able to look at not how do I see myself, but step out of myself to be able to see, how do other people possibly see me, and me take responsibility like you did, which was taking responsibility to be perceived the way you want it to be, not the way that you hoped to be. It's a different process with this. And what I love about what you're doing is, I call it form over function. You see a lot of, matter of fact, the book, somebody mentioned that, when they read the book, was that it was the first thing they've seen that wasn't conceptual, it was practical application, things that they can do. Same thing for your mission, your Culture Plus. It's not separate from Softway. It's a part of the heart of Softway. So you've actually not married the two, but you've kind of, through self-awareness, looked and say, what's working inside and what's not working, what hasn't worked, and being open, because what we've learned from a teaching standpoint is that people learn better from hearing about your mistakes than they learn from hearing about your successes. And I think part of it has to do with, when we share our mistakes, it makes us be real and somebody who somebody can stick their life against. If we're talking about all of our successes, it's almost like there's a pedestal that gets created that makes it hard for somebody to reach that, but they can easily reach to that place of the holes that are created with this journey. And in order to do that, you got to step into this place of caring for the people enough to where you're willing to show, where have you stumbled? Where have you fallen along those lines? And so, Mohammad, it's been a joy getting a chance to spend some time with you. You got a great mission that you're on. It's been an honor to be able to capture just a small piece of your story. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, to connect with you, if they want to continue to have discussions on this subject?
Yeah, absolutely. I am very active on LinkedIn. So you could look me up, Mohammad Anwar, and type in Softway or Mohammad Anwar and Culture Plus, and you'll find me. But other than that, you can reach out to me on our website, loveasabusinessstrategy.com, to get more visibility into our book, our story. There's a video out there that will give you a little bit more insights about the story of Softway. So you can reach out to me through the website as well. But I am definitely very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, super. Well, we'll drop this in the show notes also for anybody who's watching this. You can check there to be able to see Mohammad's contact information. And what I loved about getting a chance to know him is he's not just passionate about the subject, but he's passionate about his desire for people to understand the impact they can have, not just at work, but at home. Right. And that's a key part of your process. So I wish you great success in your journey, and look forward to hearing more about it as your walk continues to unfold and impact people on a global basis.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate the support.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.